Mama's turned to germaphobe, and for good reason. It's week 10 postpartum. If you're new to these updates, each week I talk about the physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of postpartum living. And let me start with the physical. Physically, this was a brutal week, and let me tell you the story. It started after I put Paloma down. I was just getting ready to relax into bed, to read and go to bed early when I hear, "Mom, Mom." I go into Griffin's room, open the door, and I am just overwhelmed by the smell. Go to his bed, and there is throw up everywhere. On his sheets, on the floor, on this bedside table, in his hair. I mean, the kid was covered. It was like he threw up everything he had ever eaten for the past 2 years. So we get him out, we put him in the shower, we strip the bed, we clean it all up, and we put some towels down just in case it happened again. And sure enough, it did a couple more times throughout the middle of the night. But by morning, he was in good spirits. He didn't have a fever. So I thought, it was just food poisoning, not a big deal, And I got to love my son's attitude. He's like, "Hey, Mom, I threw up, no big deal." He just had such a great response to it all. So later that day, I actually took Paloma to the doctor for her checkup, and I was talking to the doctor about Griffin's throwing up, and she said, "You know what, just be aware that it could be the flu, and if it comes back, don't be concerned, because that's kind of how this flu works, and you might see a fever come in there and that sort of thing." So I was like, okay, good to know. Well, that night when I went to check on him, I felt his forehead and he felt hot. I'm like, oh great, this is the flu. And sure enough, the next morning he threw up. And the next morning I woke up and I felt nauseous, so much so that I had a bucket by my bed just in case I threw up. And then Mike started to feel nauseous. So now all of us are getting this flu thing. Luckily, at this point, Paloma seems to be okay and not getting sick, and all is well on that front. So I'm thinking, okay, you know what? The worst is behind us. We're getting through this. And then all of a sudden, Griffin develops a runny nose, a sneezing everywhere, and a horrible hacking cough. And I'm like, this is the flu that is never going to end. Emotionally, this was the hardest week that we've had since Paloma was born, and for 3 reasons. The first was Paloma. I was so worried about her. I did not want her to get sick. I mean, first of all, a fever for a 2-month-old can be super serious. And don't even get me started about that cough. I mean, it sounded horrible. And of course, I go to, it's whooping cough, and that can be deadly for a 2-month-old, and it just freaked me out. So what I found I was doing, basically Mike and I just separated the whole house. Him and Griffin had a couple rooms. Paloma and I stayed in these other 2 rooms. And I just tried to shelter her as much as possible because I did not want her to get sick. She's not old enough to really fight this stuff off in the same way that we can. I also was washing my hands probably 50 times a day, and I'm not even exaggerating. Lotion is like my new best friend because my hands are so dry. I also was spraying everything with thieves oil. I was chugging on the probiotics. I was giving Paloma the probiotics. I was doing the elderberry syrup. I mean, I was doing everything I could just to stay healthy and to keep her healthy. The second reason why this was such a brutal week emotionally was because of Griffin. I literally felt like I was abandoning my son. Because I didn't want to catch what he had, I was really keeping my distance. His cough was so spreadable. I mean, you could just literally see the virus or the bacteria just wanting to spread. So I was so, always keeping my distance. Everything that he touched, I was like wiping down. I mean, I did hug him a couple times. I would tell him I loved him. I tried to talk to him as much as I could. I had Mike tell him a lot, that mommy was just trying to, not get sick because of Paloma. But it's still just hard. I mean, I feel like it was like ripping out my heart, because I like to love on him when he was sick. But when you have this other child that I'm with all the time because I'm nursing her, it's a whole different story. And this is something I never even thought about when I got pregnant or just introduced a second child into my household. And then the third and final thing is I am so over this polar vortex winter. Now we're like in the second cycle of it. And it is just brutal because any other time, even if this was winter in Chicago, usually, you get like a 30-degree day or something, I would just have Griffin be outside, put on your snow pants, kid, your snow boots, and just go play outside. Just spread those germs out there, just not be cooped inside. But because of this weather, we are all trapped. Woo, it's been a heavy update so far, so let's have a happy break. The truth is, despite having a rough and tumble week, I am so grateful for so many things. First of all, that Mike's job is flexible enough that he could be home and be with Griffin. I can't even imagine if I had to be home with just the two of them trying to block and tackle. I mean, it would have been a freaking disaster. Literally, I'd have to like put him in front of the TV the whole day or something. I mean, I don't know how you would do it. The second thing is, when I did take Paloma to the doctor, she was in the 75th percentile in weight and height, and she really seems to just be thriving. She's growing. She's just doing wonderfully. And the third thing is, this flu is nasty, as I'm sure a lot of you can attest to, and it only took down 1 out of 4 people, and for that I'm incredibly grateful. And the final thing is, people get sick, kids get sick, and just deal with it. I find myself getting resentful at God, like, why is this happening? And it's like, no, it just happens sometimes. And it was a good reminder for me to be a little bit more vigilant, a little bit more proactive. I had ran out of elderberry syrup. I was a little bit slacking on giving Griff some of the probiotics that I was. So just a good reminder to keep up on those kinds of things. And the funny thing is, Griffin, I can't even remember the last time that he was sick. Seriously, which is pretty incredible for a 3-year-old because, they get the colds and the snuffy noses and the coughs and that sort of thing. And we went through literally a year period where he did not get sick. There was maybe once or twice where there was a hint of something, but he would kick it out literally within 24 hours. And what we did during that time was every night I gave him a foot massage. And I know this sounds crazy, but I remember sitting or talking to a massage therapist, and she said she massaged her son every single day, and he never got sick until he was 12 years old when he finally was like, Mom, that's not cool. Don't massage me anymore. And so it was just a good reminder, like there is something to it, especially with the feet, because the foot carries like all the different organs, like in Chinese medicine, and it's a great like immunity booster. So I am definitely going to go back to that little practice, and hopefully it will save us from something like this happening again, or at least not for a long time. So there you have it. That's what's up with us in week 10. Hope you had a better week, and share it with me in the comments below. And thanks as always for tuning in.